I'm doing a Cash App giveaway on Instagram and on Twitter, and I plan to be doing this alternating both of those pages bi-weekly. Starting out, it's going to be picking a couple of people to win $100, but I'm sure as our channel continues to grow, then I will be able to increase that amount. And it's my way of saying thank you guys, because a year ago we started this channel, and 1 year later we have over 300,000 subscribers, which to me is absolutely ludicrous. So from the bottom of my heart, I wanted to thank you guys. And if you want to help continue this channel's growth, then sack the like button for the YouTube algorithm, subscribe, and turn on our notifications. Now that we got all of that out of the way, Mic check 1 2 1 2. What's going on, everybody? Guys, I haven't been feeling so good recently, and that's because it's been almost over a week since I've last made a video on the Deshaun Watson situation. And boy, is this a juicy situation, because in my entire life, in my 2 decades of being a NFL fan, I don't think I've ever seen a situation quite like this. I've always compared this situation to Carson Palmer's situation with the Cincinnati Bengals back in 2010, but Carson Palmer wasn't nearly on the tier of talent that Deshaun Watson currently is in. On top of that, Carson Palmer played a significantly longer time with the Cincinnati Bengals than Deshaun Watson did with the Houston Texans. And if you guys don't know what's going on there, if you've been living under a rock and your neighbor happens to be a squid that loves to play the clarinet, let me catch you up on everything you need to know. Deshaun Watson's disdain for the Houston Texans was very low-key last year. This is when the Texans decided to trade the arguably best wide receiver in the entire NFL in DeAndre Hopkins to the Arizona Cardinals for pennies on the dollar, literally just getting back David Johnson in return and not even getting much in draft compensation in return for arguably the league's best wide receiver. Now, the reason why this was so puzzling is originally it was thought that the Texans wanted to shed DeAndre Hopkins' cap value because it didn't really make much sense cap-wise. They didn't really have a lot of money owed to anybody. They only had to pay Laramie Tunsil, which they recently traded for, and that's about it. But regardless, they traded away DeAndre Hopkins, and later on, they traded the second-round pick that they received from the Arizona Cardinals to the LA Rams for Brandon Cooks, who is getting paid in the ballpark of the same amount as DeAndre Hopkins, but at that point, you should have just kept DeAndre Hopkins. Nevertheless, Deshaun Watson said that this didn't bother him that much. It did, but it wasn't to the point where it would cause him to demand a trade himself. Things got really bad this offseason because the Houston Texans were the 3rd worst team in the NFL. Bear in mind, they traded 2 total first-round picks for Laramie Tunsil. Every other team was having a good time pillaging the Houston Texans while Bill O'Brien was the general manager. Things got really bad when the head coaching vacancy and the general manager vacancy by the Houston Texans needed to be filled. Bob McNair's son, the brand new owner of the Houston Texans, Cal McNair, told Deshaun Watson initially that he'd be involved in all of the decisions that were made for the Houston Texans, which makes sense. If you're the face of a franchise and you want to have a say in matters, it makes sense to include your quarterback's opinion on whoever he may be playing for and whoever the general manager might be, especially if that quarterback is Deshaun Watson, who appears to be quite possibly the most impressive quarterback I've ever seen after putting up the numbers he did with the amount of tools that he had at his disposal. Needless to say, for the umpteenth time, the Houston Texans dropped the ball when it came to roster construction. As a matter of fact, they began repeating their same mistakes. Once again, they tapped into the Bill Belichick tree in order to try to bolster their own team, hiring Nick Caserio as general manager. Now, this rubbed Deshaun Watson the wrong way. Apparently, he also wanted an interview for Eric Bieniemy, and ultimately, the Texans decided to hire a head coach by the name of David Culley. That's just a brief summary, guys. If you want an entire video on it. I'll link it in the end screen so you can be caught up. I just don't want to repeat the same information to my subscribers, because the interesting part here, and the part that we haven't gotten to yet, is the tug of war between Deshaun Watson and the Houston Texans. You see, Deshaun Watson says that he is gone. He's demanding a trade. There's nothing he wants to do with the Houston Texans, and he will not play for them. The Houston Texans say that they are not trading Deshaun Watson no matter what. And we've been at this little stalemate over the past couple of weeks where one side says we're not trading him, and the other side is saying that, hey, no, you better trade me because I am not playing a single down for you anymore. I've said repeatedly that it is in the Houston Texans' best interest to trade Deshaun Watson, even if he didn't want to be traded. The Texans are so far gone and are so damaged that at this point, in order to recoup any assets, in order to trend towards a competent rebuild, you need to trade Deshaun Watson, and you need to take back multiple first-round picks and maybe some second-round picks, and yeah, maybe a project QB as well, in order for your team to have a fighting chance. Having Deshaun Watson on your roster right now, with no first-round pick this year, with absolutely no leverage in free agency with free agents this year, bear in mind Deshaun Watson's entire wide receiver core is a little bit past their prime in Randall Cobb and Brandon Cooks. Obviously, Will Fuller is a stud, but Watson doesn't really have many weapons to work with offensively. At this point, the Texans need as many assets as they possibly can get. And there's been only two teams that I was able to predict the Houston Texans being able to get a sufficient return for Deshaun Watson from. One team being the Miami Dolphins, because the Miami Dolphins have 2 first-round picks this year. They could trade back Tua Tagovailoa, and honestly, they can be fine without the number 3 pick in this year's NFL draft. They could trade that pick, which was originally the Houston Texans, back to the Houston Texans and get back Deshaun Watson in an offense that isn't that much better than what Deshaun Watson already has on the Houston Texans, but has a rock-solid culture and a remarkable up-and-coming defense as well. The other team that I said could potentially give the Houston Texans the value that they need for Deshaun Watson is the New York Jets. And the reason is very similar to what the Miami Dolphins had. The New York Jets also have multiple first-round picks this year, one being the 2nd overall pick and the other being the 27th overall pick that was gifted to them as a result of the Jamal Adams trade. Now, the 27th overall pick is just 7 picks away from their natural 2nd round pick, so they would probably be the most willing to part with one of those picks, in addition to a 2nd round pick, maybe trade back Sam Darnold. And the Jets make significantly more sense for Deshaun Watson because, in my opinion, they are probably in the most awkward position out of every team in the top 5 in the NFL draft. You see, the very first pick in the NFL draft is going to be Trevor Lawrence. The 2nd overall pick is very ambiguous. A lot of people think that the Jets should spend it on a brand new quarterback. I personally disagree because Sam Darnold is still on a rookie contract. You don't need to pay him anything. You might as well see what you have in him in one more year under a brand new head coach. On top of that, the New York Jets already drafted a stud at left tackle last year with their 1st round pick in Mekhi Becton, so Penei Sewell wouldn't necessarily make much sense there either, although it would be nice. I don't think it's that necessary. Now, you could also say that the Jets could use some wide receiver help, but spending a 2nd overall pick on the likes of Jamar Chase or Devontae Smith is way too early in my opinion, and they may be stud wide receivers, but when I'm thinking of spending a number 2 overall pick on a wide receiver, that wide receiver better be a prospect similar to the likes of Calvin Johnson. So their best option here is to trade back with a team that desperately wants to draft Justin Fields or Zach Wilson with the 2nd overall pick. And that's why I believe the New York Jets probably would make the most sense for the Houston Texans. And guess what? We just got a report that the Houston Texans agree with that. This is according to a Houston Texans beat writer by the name of John McClain, who has covered the NFL at the Houston Chronicle for more than 45 years. And he said this on Fox Sports Radio in Houston. This is how you could tell this is a legitimate source. He first said that the Houston Texans were firm on their stance about not trading Deshaun Watson, which sounds very on brand. It's very on par with the behavior that we've seen from the Houston Texans so far. But he continued to say that anybody who says that the Texans called the Eagles, that's not true. If they traded him, it would be to the New York Jets. They have not contacted anyone about trading Deshaun Watson. So wow, this rumor makes a ton of sense. This makes consistent sense with everything I've said before. This sounds exactly like how the Houston Texans have been handling Deshaun Watson so far, and this sounds like the best return they could possibly get for Deshaun Watson, and also, low-key, one of the best situations Deshaun Watson could go into. The New York Jets are a much better team than we seem to think they are. It's not because of Sam Darnold or a horrible offense or a terrible defense that the Jets were terrible last year. It was all coaching, in my opinion. They had studs on both sides of the ball, like Quinnen Williams and Marcus May on the defensive side of the ball, and Denzel Mims, Mekhi Becton, Jamison Crowder on the offensive side of the ball. You plug in Deshaun Watson and you couple that with Mike LaFleur and Bob Saleh, and I think you have a dark horse contender to make a run to the NFL playoffs. Meanwhile, on the Houston Texans end, they get an adequate return for Deshaun Watson. I don't think that the Jets are going to be giving up every single pick that they have, but a team that has that type of capital and could also give you Sam Darnold in return is significantly more appealing than a team that probably would be able to give you a couple of firsts over the next 3 years. Most teams would rather gut their capital for 1 year as opposed to gut their capital for multiple years. So let me know in the comment section down below, what do you guys think about this report? Aside from that, I'm your boy Mike, and I'm dropping our mic until our next upload.